KUHS, the stream on Melody Drive, and I am the host of today's show, The Weekend Boost, Paul Lane, also author of The Caregiver's Handbook, a self-help love story. Guys, I talk about the book every now and then. I really don't talk much about it. Oh, I got to get my microphones up.
Let's start over.
We'll start over. 2 and 3. I've been told I'm not very technical, and I'm here to verify that. Guys, again, good morning. You are watching KUHS, the stream on Melody Drive, and this is the Weekend Boost. I am the host today, Paul Lane, and the author of The Caregiver's Handbook, a self-help love story. I started talking about this book. This is a chronological events of my wife's passing 16 years ago. She died of a rare brain tumor called the glioblastoma multiforme. Guys, if you know someone who has cancer, someone who's suffering from dementia, memory loss, Alzheimer's, this book is such a helpful and useful tool because it is a self-help love story, but it is a caregiver's handbook. And so if you're at all interested, please reach out to us at the station. One of the things that I really talk about in the book that I did was that at the end of every chapter I have this little gray area. And that really just talks about what I learned from my stupidness. But guys, believe me, there's a lot of mistakes that you could avoid by having this book in your hands when the time comes. I was just talking to my guest Chris today, just a little bit ago, and you know, the thing that we never think about when we're standing at the altar is the words, "Till death do us part." It's a sad part of life, and it's a part of reality, but anyway, I am the author of that book, and you know, if you are interested at all, please reach out to us. I will be glad to get an autographed copy in your hands. You can find that book at paullane.net. paullane.net. Also, I'm offering services, very, very comprehensive services for people who are in need. I don't care if you're in pain, if you're having depression. I am a certified life coach. If you are having family problems or issues, concerns, down, heavy, overweight, or weighted down with life's trauma, give me a call. I really have some great cutting-edge technologies. This is one. I just purchased this medical-grade set of musical bars, and I love it. I got to tell you, I have 7 of these. These are for your 7 chakras, for chakra alignment. And this one happens to be for your third eye alignment, and that is for intuition. If you go further into these, you go from intuition, you go to, spirituality is a crown, then intuition is your third eye, your throat is your communication chakra, your heart is your chakra of love, your power is your solar plexus chakra, sexuality in your next chakra down, and then your root chakra is your survival chakra. And when you come to my sessions, you get some very useful tips and useful vibrations that will harmonize in your body. I am waiting for some very, very cutting-edge technology to come to it this week. And if you have knee problems, back problems, I'm going to give you some good relief. So reach out to me at paullane.net. I will be able to get you on my schedule, and we are at your service. Guys, as usual, I always like to put a shout out to my friends at CALMA, the Colorado Alliance for Latino Mentors and Authors. And man, I've been through some really exciting events in the past 2 weeks. Last Saturday, I went to the La Llorona Festival over at the Corky Gonzalez Library at 14th and Irving in Denver. Oh my gosh, guys, it was so amazing. It was so cool. There were 4 or 5 storytellers, and there was a play that went on. My friend Charlene Garcia was there. Chris Garcia was actually one of the readers that read one of the Llorona stories. There was a play at the end of it that was Virginia Sanchez was also a Calma member, one of the founding members, was also in the play. Really, literally brought me to tears. Also, just this week, I don't know if you guys know about Chicano leaders in Denver's history, Colorado's history, the United States history, but Lalo Delgado was recently inducted into the Colorado Authors Hall of Fame, the second Latino after Manuel Ramos. And I'm just so excited that we got to go to the tribute to Lalo Delgado. I was fortunate enough to meet him back in the 90s, and I had no idea who I was talking to. Otherwise, I would have cherished it much more. The last thing is, we were so fortunate. We, Thursday night, went up to Boulder for the Song of Pueblo concert, which was put together by Deb and Juan Espinosa. Also, all of the music was put together and written by Daniel Valdez, the legendary Daniel Valdez. And guys, if you don't know about Denver's Chicano history, man, you need to learn about the names of Daniel Valdez and Deb and Juan Espinosa. At this tribute, I was so fortunate for Lalo Delgado that legends were there. Frank Davila, Ricardo Laforé, Dr. Ramon del Castillo, Charlene Garcia. There's so many people, men and women that were there who have represented Latino Chicano people over the last decades, and it's just such an exciting opportunity to be around those kind of people. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started with today's show. Guys, this is October, and if you are from Colorado, if you are Latino, most people, even not Latino, know about La Llorona. I remember I was a Boy Scout, and I was up in the mountains, and this Boy Scout leader was a great big guy. His name was Abe, and he was a big man, and he was a black man, and we were up there in the cabin, and it was dark, and he smoked a pipe, and he had the smoke going out there, and he was saying, "I'm going to tell you a story of the Llorona." And we couldn't figure out what the story was about until he started telling them. We said, "Oh, La Llorona!" And so everybody knows La Llorona. And I'm so excited because Chris Garcia has put together this story, The Red Moon Night. And Chris, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Tell me a little bit about how did you come about to write this book?
Well, I was getting my master's degree in Tucson, Arizona at the University of Arizona, and I would have to do these long drives from Tucson to Denver, and I would take this shortcut from Deming to Hatch, and they called it the trucker's shortcut. And I would be driving in the middle of the night, and there would be not another car on the road, and it would be very creepy, and I'd cross a few bridges.
I've driven that road.
Rivers, yes, yeah. And so I was writing at the time, and I was failing because I didn't know what story I wanted to tell, and I think I was trying to, just write what was cool, what was out there, and I wasn't writing about myself or my family. And so one night I was driving home to Denver, and I saw a woman on the side of the road in the middle of the night, which was a bizarre sight. And so I decided not to stop. She wasn't, thumbing for a ride or anything. But about, 5 or 6 minutes later, I saw another woman on the side of the road, and she was thumbing for a ride. And I asked myself, should I stop and help this person? And I was very self-consumed and trying to get home by daylight and all that stuff. And then I saw another woman on the side of the road. And something, told me that this was a spirit, that this was a sign. Mm-hmm. And something that came to mind was a story that my grandfather never told, but that our family knew. And it was that my grandfather, in his drinking days, he and his buddy would, take these desolate roads to little villages and drink away from their town so that their, spouses wouldn't know what they were up to. And so, my grandfather had these legendary drinking days, and I would hear about this change in his life. And everybody points to the change in his life as the night that he saw La Llorona. Mm-hmm. So he was driving from, the San Luis Valley to another little town in New Mexico, and he and his buddy were driving, and his buddy said, saw this woman on the road and said, what if I scare her? What if I throw a bottle at her and scare her? And my grandfather was like, no, keep driving. And so this guy, throws the bottle out, tries to scare her. Well, a couple miles down the road, my grandfather looks in the rearview mirror and sees that the woman is in the back of the truck. And so he pulls over and gets out of the truck, and she's gone. And so in my family, we have that story, and people, cousins and uncles, and everybody would say, it was La Llorona. La Llorona finds wayward men and scares them into acting right.
That story gave me the chills. I was reading it. I read it out loud. I read my books out loud to my wife, and when I got to that point in the story, it's like, oh man, that was a good story. I'm sorry, forgive me.
No. And so when I had the experience similar to my grandfather's experience, I had to ask some questions of myself and kind of decide, what kind of person I wanted to be, what kind of man I wanted to become, and if I wanted to actually be a writer. and so yeah, so I felt like, oh my gosh, I have a story. I have a story to tell. And so I wrote it in a little 10-page story, and my mom for years and years was like, you need to do something with this. And so I decided to submit it for a grant, and got it, and wrote feverishly for a couple months, and I shared it with everybody. It's weird to share such a personal story, because I'm a screenwriter by trade, so we always talk about high concept, and high concept is a story that speaks to everybody. And so, like I said, sometimes you're chasing these big ideas, these Hollywood ideas, and this is not there might be some Hollywood scares in this story, but it's so regional and so personal. And so
this is a familia. This is something that you would keep.
Exactly. This is familia. This is me. This is the ghost stories we told growing up, and to share it with people that might not know about the region, or that say, La Llorona or La Lorena, which I've heard, a million times. I'm like, no, Llorona.
Yeah.
Say it with me, Llorona, one more time, and just trying to get people to just kind of embrace that language, that regional dialect, the Spanish that was, we were Spain, we were Mexico, and we're still here.
Yes. For context, give a little bit of background, and let's talk a little bit about the history of La Llorona. And this was a fascinating thing for me. So, I'm just so excited to hear. In the book you talk about other figures in history that were relatable to what we now call La Llorona, all the way from ancient Greece.
Absolutely. So, in my research, and I've been doing research for many years about different Lloronas, and because once you branch out from the Rio Grande, which is to me the home of La Llorona, you hear different versions of the story that it's very archetypical. It's very there's the archetype of the weeping mother, whether it's her children were killed in war, or they were killed by a virus, or whatever it is. You have a mother's loss, and obviously La Llorona is very steeped in the Catholic mythos, and that. But when I was doing research about the Greeks and Lamia, or there's also the Onro in Japan. There are all these figures that in Germany there's the Lorelei. And so my mom likes to think that La Llorona is a siren. She's not only this malicious spirit, but she's just this singing her song almost. And so you find this in all these different cultures. And I even found Native American versions of La Llorona. So I felt that it was if you were doing an exploration of the La Llorona, then you can find touchstones like her in other cultures.
All over. All the way 100%. To, some say, all the way to Lilith and Adam and Eve.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's just a fascinating thing. And as I learned all of this, it's like, is this a phenomenon? Is this, is this a testament to the abuse of women by men? Sorry, I'm a feminist.
Yes, yeah.
I'm going to throw that in there, but the abuse of men, I have said over and over again, the male leadership in this world is just, it's the male ego, the fragile male ego is the cause of wars, is the cause of oppression, is the cause of brutality, and it seems like every one of these stories always goes back to the brutality of a man on a woman. And I don't want to be sexist, but and I don't want to overgeneralize, but when you look at it, like the story of Malinche. Malinche was a translator for Hernan Cortés, and she was said to have craved for his love, and I don't remember exactly. She had 2 children, and she didn't want him to know she had the children, and so she, in desperation, took her children and drowned them.
Yeah, La Malinche is one of the touchstones of this entire universe, because it is the marriage of the indigenous to the new
colonizer,
the new wave of like you said, colonizers and the Catholics and Christ, and what did that mean? And that was that that meant that there was going to be a lot of loss.
Yes.
And so La Malinche cries for what was lost, and those were her children. And so I remember, my mom, giving me Rodolfo Anaya's book, La Llorona, and I there was a couple times and I felt like I shouldn't tell this story because I was male. And then when I read Rodolfo Anaya's book, I felt like, why wouldn't I? Why can't I empathize with a woman's suffering, even though it's not mine? How I can be a conduit for it? And that was something that I explored while writing this book, was just the notion of abuse and what it would be like to be pressured to, give up a child or to and so many. And that was another thing I discovered when I was doing the research about the Native American, the Navajos specifically, when they were having their children taken from them and institutionalized or adopted away. So I found some La Llorona stories in that culture as well, and the crying mother as we talk about.
There's even a legend of the woman crying because she was hungry, and they called her the hungry woman, And so there's so many variations, and yet I got to tell you, on the way to Boulder, I took Dee's 82-year-old Uncle Emilio, and we're going down the road, and I was telling him about today's show, and he said, the original Llorona story happened in Delta, Colorado. And I got to tell you, so many times in my life, I have heard people tell me the original Llorona story happened in Manzanilla, Colorado, happened in Pueblo, Colorado, happened in Trinidad, happened in Alabama. It's not just cultural, it's not just regional, but it's cultural.
Yeah.
And
we want to take. We all want to touch the authenticity of the story. And
yes.
we want to make it our own.
We want to feel that connection,
yeah,
I guess.
And trust me, I 100% identify with that, because my family ghost story is a La Llorona ghost story, and I wanted it to be tied to the original.
Yes.
So I had to kind of create all these different paths that intertwine into what is Red Moon Night.
Yes. As I read the book, it's actually chronicled through people's testimonies.
Yes.
And so it's like Nora Rivera's journal, and then it's dated January 16, 2007. And then as you go through, you see different entries from, different authors or different contributors. And it really makes the book have a lot more depth, because you're having different perspectives. And, it's the same story being told by different people, but it really has continuity for me.
Well, so it's a what we call in the literary tradition an epistolary tale. So an epistolary story it's a collection of found items, and essentially an editor puts together these found items to create a narrative. And so I'm a big fan of Gothic horror, and so you have Mary Shelley and Frankenstein, and Bram Stoker and Dracula, and these are compilations of found items. And I really felt as though La Llorona needed an epistolary. I wanted to give her an entry in this kind of classic way of telling stories, which is from different perspectives and different times, and then it all comes together to make a greater narrative.
You mentioned Rodolfo Anaya's Llorona.
Oh yeah.
Talk a little bit about that. And I'm actually reading Bless Me Ultima, and so that's kind of one of my. I'm reading like about 5 books at the same time. I can't help it.
That was my entry to Chicano literature. So
man.
Just I love the witchiness of it, and the symbolism, and the region. I mean, I just feel like when I was growing up in Pueblo and I had an endless prairie for a backyard, I would just think to myself, what's out there? And then I'd go fishing by the river, and I'd always be afraid to stay out too late because La Llorona might come and get me. And so, just having Rodolfo Anaya, write these seminal pieces like Bless Me Ultima and like La Llorona, just gave me kind of an opportunity to say, I can do this too. Now, maybe not as well, but I would, I felt like, okay, why can't I tell stories from our perspective?
Yes, why not?
And so that's why, I didn't shy away from telling a La Llorona story when, you know, 3/4 of the people you talk to about the story, you have to tell them the cultural roots of it. And so I think that the cultural roots, for me anyways, was what Rodolfo and I did in terms of setting the stage for other Latino authors to emerge.
I so get what you're saying. I remember back in the 90s, I read The Reign of Gold, Victor Villaseñor. That inspired me so much, I went and learned how to make tortillas. I mean, that book inspired me so much that was really the basis of me writing my book. I mean,
Cool.
His style inspired me, his ability to tell a story. Rodolfo Anaya, oh my gosh, so far what I've read in Bless Me Ultima, he has a way of explaining things. He talks about this woman who was a curandera, I don't want to call her a witch doctor, maybe a shaman, a medicine woman. And Ultima was just such a wise woman in his tale, and he brings to life this experience. And when you're writing or reading a book, guys, you never know what's going to inspire you to write a book, you know, or to write a story, to write a poem, to write a paragraph or a blog. I mean, you know, every week, you know, on the show, I try to encourage you to pick up your tablet, get your typewriter and get, you know, page 1 written. And, you know, what inspires you? What really inspires you, you know, when you're writing? You mentioned Rodolfo Anaya was big, your mom was a big influence on you.
Yeah, you know, and I'm also I'm a huge horror fan. Like I said, I love gothic horror. And to me, you know, I was a child. I'm a child of the '80s, so I grew up with Stephen King being, you know, the king of horror. And then I just loved that, you know, that Rodolfo Anaya was touching on some similar themes, but from our perspective. And so that was what kind of inspired me to say, hey, you know, like, sure, like you know, this Stephen King is the king of horror, but, you know, can there be also, you know, can I play with just aspects of our culture that introduce an audience to La Llorona or the different. I've heard so many regional stories that scare me to my core, and I want to bring those stories to a greater audience so they can see, you know, kind of what I was scared of as a child. And so I guess my inspiration oftentimes is that spine-tingling campfire story that it doesn't matter if it's Stephen King or Rodolfo Anaya, it's what affects the audience, the listener. And I oftentimes say, to be a good teller, you have to be a good listener first. And I used to grow up listening to my aunties just tell scary stories, and, you know, and I would just I would take mental note and say, you know, how, you know, I can't wait to scare my gringo friends with this story about this, because they'd never heard anything like it before. And we'd go fishing, I'd tell the story, and they'd have a hitch in their step when they were going back to the car. So it's fun. I think horror is fun. It's not only there is a lot of morality play going on in horror stories. There's always a moral to the story. There's original sin that's committed, and then you either redeem yourself or you fall. And so I love those paths of the stories, but I also just love introducing audiences to things they've never heard before.
I think it's just fascinating that you know, so many times through assimilation, much of our culture is lost. One of the things about Latino Chicano people that I think that the masses do not like is that we have refused to release our cultural values. Much of our, you know, I mean, we don't teach our kids Spanish as much as we used to, but much of our culture we cling on to, and through expressing and sharing these stories, I think that we're really letting a part of that culture out, and, you know, really keeping that part of our culture alive.
Oh yeah, and language is a big part of that. My mom says her greatest regret is not my mom, who is fluent in Spanish. She said her greatest regret was not teaching me Spanish. But in the 80s, we were kind of told, you know, not to speak Spanish because we would be judged by the greater society, and we didn't want to sound like a Chicano, or we didn't want to sound like a Mexican, because it might hurt your job prospects or your school prospects, and to have that taken away from you is it took me a long time to want to reclaim it. And this is a path for me, in delving into a Chicano, Chicano, Latino, regional, ethnic story. I wanted to rediscover parts of myself that I may have been, afraid to share in years past.
And that's very good that that you've taken that step. I'm just going to say this. For much of our history, society has largely excluded the Chicano Latino population from educational opportunities, from corporate opportunities, from many things in life. And I always say, I just wrote a blog about how my mom was adamant about not teaching her kids Spanish because of the humiliation she received at the hands of those who were entrusted to educate her. And so that internalization of inferior status made it so that, even when the term Chicano came out, my mom forbade us from using that word, that term. When the walkouts happened at the Denver Public Schools, my mom forbade us from walking out because she didn't understand the real plight of our people. And she internalized that inferior status and said, I am not worthy of equality. I am not worthy. I could never write a book. I'm not smart enough. I'm not wise enough. I'm not experienced enough. I don't deserve it. And so much of that internalization has to be wiped off. And it's really up to people like you and me, Chris, to express, hey, there's pride in our history. There's pride in our culture. I don't want to go off track too much, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, we feel relegated and marginalized, and the walls are a little bit higher, and it's an illusion. We can get, as long as we are authentic and genuine in ourselves, the walls just fall down in front of you. And that's how I feel like the biggest challenge to writing this book was myself. And so I would tell my friends and family, I would say the only thing that's going to stop me is me. And so once I decided not to stop, I wrote this book in a couple months and displayed it, and I am proud to write a second edition and hopefully get it to a bigger audience.
And I think it's worthy of it. There's a poem I learned many years ago. It says, "An enemy of mine I had, whose face I stoutly strove to know. For hard he dogged my steps unseen, wherever I did go. One night I seized and held him fast, and from the vial did draw. I looked upon his face at last, and lo, myself I saw." So who holds us back? So many times we're so worried about, oh yeah, look at him, he's going to look feminine, or he's going to be weak, or or screw that. I don't care what you think. I'm doing me. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm doing what is best for me. And you know what? And if what I'm doing is going to help society, then more power to me. More power to you. Write that book.
Write that book.
So you're actually working on a part 2 of this book, a second edition.
Yeah, so as I said, I wrote this book at a fevered pace because I had the opportunity to present it in October for National Hispanic Heritage Month, and it being October, the library allowed us to show the art from the book, so we had a big creepy art show, which was fantastic. One of my best friends, Rogelio Quinones, did the art for this book, and
hold that up so you can
incredibly talented guy, and I just had to partner with him. And our thinking was, I grew up with Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, reading that, when I was in elementary school, and I said, why don't we have one of these for our boogie woman, La Llorona? And so that's kind of the inception of, let's put some art with it. Let's create some art. And so the library was generous enough to let us have an art show and help us sell copies of the book. And unfortunately, COVID hit right after that, and so we kind of, bunkered down after that. But I'm looking forward to doing a second edition and doing an audio version of it, because more often than not, I'm listening to a book than reading a book because I am out and about all the time and walking my dog. And right now, I'm listening to Edgar Allan Poe in my ear, and you know, and the leaves are falling, and I want to do that with this book so that people can experience it in multiple ways. It's you know, I think I love the idea of this sitting on the coffee table and you picking it up on a nice fall day and blasting through it because it's a story that's captivating. But I also love listening to stories as well.
Yes, me too. I love listening. Hey guys, by the way, if you're just joining us, you are watching KUHS The Stream on Melody Drive. This is the Weekend Boost, and I am your host, Paul Lane. We are talking today to Chris Garcia, the author of The Red Moon Night. And when you, Red Moon, talk about the Red Moon Night. What is a Red Moon Night?
Well, so when I was a little kid, I was fishing. It was getting dark outside, and you know, we never wanted to go in, especially when we were, you know, 15, 16. You know, we thought we were men, and you know, wanted to just like, you know, drink beers at the river or whatever it was. It was our kind of our sanctuary away from society, and you know, so the excuse was to have beers was we'd go fishing, and so we. I was out there with a good friend of mine, and we're fishing, and we were joking, you know, we better get out of here, else La Llorona's going to get us. You know, we were joking, and we're big men, you know, we're 16-year-old men, right? You know, that's a thing. And so it was the fall, and I just remember seeing this harvest moon coming up over the horizon, and the perspective of seeing that red or orange moon coming over the horizon in the fall, it stirs you.
Mystical.
It's mystical. It's really powerful. And so I just remember just being overwhelmed at that sight. And I don't know why it hit me so hard at that moment, because I had seen moons like that before. But I guess it was that I was at the river. Well, years later, when I was driving from Tucson to Denver, and I was on the trucker's shortcut between Hatch and Deming, I saw another red moon, but it was a little bit different. It was high in the sky, and it was really, really blood red.
That's a dark road. There's no lights at all. Yeah.
And I thought to myself, it felt apocalyptic. It felt biblical, and that was it wasn't the same drive as when I saw the lady on the road. But it was still as impactful. I'm like, am I seeing signs on this road that are either inspiring me or telling me something? And so somebody told me, they said, well, in the desert, when the soil gets real high in the atmosphere, the moon glows red. But the farmers think it's a devil's moon. They think it's a bad omen. And so, you know, you're left with that skeptical side. You know, is it just desert soil high in the sky making the moon glow red, or is it, you know, is there something to it, or is it both? And so I felt compelled to not only be a skeptic. In every horror story, you know, everybody, you know, says that they're skeptical at the beginning. You can explain everything away, and then by the middle of the story, that skepticism starts to fall, and then by your third act, you're
entrenched.
You're entrenched. You're now running. In my story, you're running from the ghost rather than trying to dispel it or explain it away.
Yes, I think the word immersed is such a good word when you're talking about this kind of a reading. You know, because you're emotionally connected. You know, as you read this story, I mean, I guess I could only speak for myself, but, you know, as I was reading these stories, particularly, I mean, all through the book, but, you know, when you started talking about Brother Bernardo, he was a monk, and he actually uncovered some writings that were pretty historic, and he put them together. They were a collection that was, I think, actually put together in this book, and as you read that version of La Llorona, it was bone-chilling. It was really creepy at the end.
I wanted to get deeper into the mythology, and of course, everybody that writes about La Llorona wants to tell the real La Llorona story. And so I thought to myself, you know, what if there was a church chronicler that actually documented. Because here's the thing, how much of history is lost when the documentation is lost, you know? You lose,
It never happened.
Yeah, it never happened. And so
Wow.
my thinking was, you know, what if a Catholic monk were to discover some documentation about what actually happened to Maria of the Rio Grande, who was
Donde estás mi hijo?
yeah, exactly. who was made to suffer, meant to suffer, you know, and the question is, you know, is she also some sort of anti-hero, you know, seeking revenge for the crimes that were bestowed upon her? And I think there is some validity to La Llorona being an anti-hero and setting us wayward men straight and scaring children home by dark and scaring, you know, young women into not putting themselves in situations where they are cursed themselves. Whatever that is, you know.
Yeah, exactly. If somebody wanted to get a hold of your book, Chris, where would they go or how would they find it?
Two ways. I have a website, redmoonnight.com, where you can order a copy. It takes about a week because all the shipping and whatnot. You can also email me at pmmoviekris@gmail.com. So that's pmmoviechris@gmail.com, and I could get you a copy a little bit quicker.
So guys, this is really a great coffee table read. It's something that's great for, like tonight's going to be a kind of a foggy, misty night, close to Halloween. You know, it's a great night for a Llorona story. It's a great night for a, I'm telling you, this book was I think it was put together in a way that you wanted to pick it up and you wanted to get more. I really appreciated that about it because I love nighttime reading, you know, and I like morning reading too, but I like to read out loud. And as I was reading through the book, there was a couple of times where I got the chance to really shout and, you know, when you were at reading over at the Corky Gonzalez Library last weekend, it was interesting, you know, and as I told you, I was waiting for you to let out a howl, man, just, you know, creep out the whole audience. And it's so funny because there's certain times when a scream has so much more validity.
Yes, yeah.
Or more energy, you know, when you're in the middle of a creepy story, especially like this, the Wailing Woman, you know, you were expecting to hear, so I had to throw one of those in before the end of the show.
Thank you.
I also want to put a plug in for this book. It is La Llorona Encounters with the Weeping Woman, because one of our past guests, Lydia Ortiz Event, has actually written a story that's in here. Very interesting story about Fort Garland and her growing up in Fort Garland, and there was a dance that she had, a party that she wanted to go to, and her mom did not let her go, but her brother decided to go, you know, without permission. And when he came back home, he was pale as a ghost and paralyzed. You know, he was so freaked out, and he said, "All of your friends were killed." Her friends were in a car, and the brother was, you know, either behind them or in front of them, and all of a sudden he saw a black woman, a woman in a black robe in the street. And the car went over and flipped over. In those days, of course, they didn't have seatbelts, and everyone was thrown from the car and killed. And at the end, you know, after it was all said and done, they found a black veil on the side of the road. So great story, you know. And there's a lot of other collection in this stories in this collection. So guys, I really encourage you, go out and find Rodolfo and Naya's version of La Llorona. The Red Moon Night is a fantastic read, easy read. I mean, this is such a quick read. You should be able to get through this in just a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And not only that, it's a worthwhile read. You know, I always try to encourage people. You know, I said, a person who won't read is no better than a person who can't read. And I'll tell you what got me reading is I once heard an Anglo person tell me, you know how I hide stuff from Mexican people? I said, how? And he goes, I put it in a book. And so I looked through every book till there ain't nothing hidden from me no more.
Nope, yep.
As a Chicano, I feel it is my responsibility to express and share our history. It is important for me to teach pride in our culture. It's important for us to share our endowments, our history, our culture, our values, our belief system. It's not wrong. It's different for many times, but our values are very interesting. Our culture is very fascinating, and it's very colorful, and La Llorona is no exception. I really appreciate having the opportunity to do that, because if you don't say it, no one's going to hear it. If you don't share it, no one's going to see it. And so keep on writing these books, man. Keep on writing these. You have a master's degree.
Yes, yeah. I went to University of Arizona and got a master's degree in library science, and I was a Knowledge River scholar, and the Knowledge River program was designed to help Latino and Native American youths get access libraries. And just as you were saying, libraries are pillars in our society, and they're changing because of the digital aspect of everything. And we talked a lot about the digital divide and how a lot of the reservations in Arizona didn't have access to computers or anything, and it's
Libraries.
the same. Yeah, it's the same thing in a lot of our Latino communities as well. And so our goal was to shrink the digital divide and to not be as marginalized, and it's a fight.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fight you can never stop waging.
You must continue.
Yeah, and cracking a book is one of the best ways. And one of the things we would often say is, sometimes it's intimidating to go into a library. Sometimes, because there are sometimes community centers, and you have a lot of homeless people there, or you have, some people would think it's the librarian is Anglo, so they might not be able to meet my needs. Well, that was what our program was about, was to make it make libraries appealing, and open the doors, no gates, no closed gates. And so it's just like cracking a book. Going into a library is I know it's a passé thing, because everything's on our phone or on our screens, but boy, I some of my fondest memories as a kid was going into the city of books, which was a library, and cracking that book, and learning and having these secrets revealed.
There are secrets in there that are very readily available, and all we got to do is just open the book.
Yes.
There's so many things that I'm, as you're talking, and just like, we lead by example. I'm retired. I don't work. I don't have a job. This is pretty much all I do for work. Well, besides my practice at home. But if you're going to do something of value. Do something that's going to enrich the lives of someone else, no matter who they are. Whether it's, I keep saying this: the fragile male ego is so frail, is the cause of so much evil in this world, so much destruction, so much oppression, so much damage, so much slavery, so many bad things. And I want to help open the eyes of men to see what we as a gender have done and are doing. And I know I keep getting off track with this, but it's kind of been heavy on my mind, and I just believe that it's time for women leadership. I believe it's time for us to really humble ourselves as men, and really see what our actions are doing and how they're affecting the lives of other human beings. I don't believe in an oppressed class. I don't believe we deserve an oppressed class or group or ethnicity or religion or whatever the case may be. There's no room for that.
The dominance is not it's not proving to be going so well.
No, it's not. It's not. And it always ends up there's a winner and a loser, and the victor writes the history, but that doesn't erase the history as it happened.
Exactly.
And so sometimes we need to come in and fill in those blanks, and that's a great place to be. You also have a production company.
Yes. I am currently producing a documentary entitled Crazy Legs, and it is about Chris Crazy Legs Fonseca, who was the first comedian with a physical disability to appear on The Late Show with David Letterman. And he, not only a Mexican man, but a Mexican man with cerebral palsy, entered the gates of Hollywood in the late 80s and had an amazing, not quite 15 minutes of fame, about 15 years of fame. And then he really got down and it fell to alcoholism, and it took him another 10 years to get his feet under him, his crazy legs under him, and now he's having a career resurgence because he's going on tour with Dave Chappelle, and Dave Chappelle says he's one of the best joke writers in history. And so I just believed when I met him and started writing with him on other projects, I said, Chris, how do we tell your story? And so I got the camera out, got some friends together, and we've been following him for the past 2 years, and I've seen him play clubs of 10, and I've seen him perform in front of 20,000 people. And, you know, being a writer is for the most part, it's a humble profession. Comedians are in the same world. However, their swings in terms of having that audience and having that reaction from the audience, it takes them to cloud 9. But what happens when they're gone? And so Chris is just a testament to what it's like to have humble beginnings, rise to the peak of fame, lose it all, and then now he's having a moment of redemption.
A resurgence.
A resurgence, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, so hopefully it's coming out next year. We're, once again, pmmoviechris@gmail.com if you want to talk about investing in the project, because the strikes really, really hurt the momentum of our project.
And that's Chris with a K.
Chris with a K, yes, yes.
So reach out, guys, find out. You know, we have 195,000 people who tune in to us at some time during this hour worldwide. I know there's people across the world who have curiosities about this Llorona legend, who have curiosities about their own culture or historical perspectives, or even whether you're interested in writing a book. Please reach out to me at the station. You can reach out to me personally at paullane.net. You can reach out to Chris through Chris.
It's a pmmoviechris, Chris with a K, @gmail.com.
And so reach out, find out how you can get started on your own book. Calma, Colorado Alliance for Latino Mentors and Authors. You don't have to live in Colorado to be a member of Calma. If you're interested in getting some mentorship and some leadership and helping yourself in your writing endeavor, reach out. There's opportunity. There's people who want to help you succeed and help you to prosper as far as an author. When I wrote my book, I was determined. I wasn't going to wait for anybody. I wrote my book, and I went to a self-publisher. I put the whole thing. I found an editor and editors. I found someone to put together the graphics, and I was determined. And I think that's exactly what it takes. And if you're writing just for pleasure, and even if you're just stacking them on the board, put them in a file in your laptop, keep on writing. One day it may become viable. Maybe in your perspective it's not viable now, but maybe it is.
Failure is the great teacher.
Man, oh man.
My trade is screenwriting, and it's the elite of all writing. And I remember, turning in my first draft and thinking it was great, and then getting that feedback that it wasn't so great. And I kept going. I turned in a second draft and got those notes, and I said, wow, this is going to be a long road. But nothing felt more worthwhile than taking those first 2 steps and learning that failure was the great teacher, because you can only get better.
I have to make a confession. Back in the 90s, I started writing my first book. And I think I had 70, 80 pages written, and I took it to someone who I respected, someone with much high education, and she redlined the whole thing. And I was so immature at that time and so unprepared for critique that I put it down and I never finished the book. And now I've realized that she really had my own best interest at heart. She didn't want me to humiliate myself, on print.
Yes.
And so if you're writing and someone's critiquing your writing, don't take it as a hurtful thing. Take it as a real a vehicle to take you to the next level in your writing, because failure is the best teacher.
And then you learn that failure may be an opportunity rather than just a failure, or it's a step, and then you have to take the next step. And so absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, I want to make sure and read this blog I wrote the other day. My father-in-law passed away a week ago Wednesday. I was married 28 years, and Alfonso Trujillo was his name, and I wrote this blog about him, and I really just wanted to share it with you because I was really proud of it. and in honor of him, because he was a good man and he was good to me as a son-in-law. He treated me like his very own son, and
Special.
His passing was a very difficult thing for me, and I see if I can find it here. Okay, where are you, blog? I'm looking. As I'm talking here, I want to make sure to talk to you about my chemo care. The new system I'm putting out. If you're on chemotherapy, man, I promise you come over here. Some of the new equipment that I have, I'm going to be using magnesium chloride flakes along with bentonite clay for a bath to help to draw heavy metals and stress from your body. I'm really doing a lot of, like I say, cutting edge technologies. Where's my blog? And doesn't look like I'm going to find it here. So it's there we are. If I could bring it up. Sorry, forgive me, guys. My technology is not the best. It's not going to come up. Darn it. Well, what it was just a tribute to my father-in-law. We used to go and take rides down to Manzanola and the endless roads, and we would have conversations, and my father-in-law would tell me deep secrets that he would never tell anyone. And I was honored that that my father-in-law was able to trust me and talk to me in a way that made me feel like his son. And his passing was very devastating to me and to many, many people, and I'm guessing there's a lot of people mourning his loss today. So I just wanted to make a shout out to Alfonso Trujillo. Thank you for being a wonderful father-in-law. I know that you're with my mother-in-law Perfilia, and your daughters and kids that you've lost, Berta and Rita, and your other 2 kids that you lost many years ago. And so I just wanted to tell you that thank you.
Our elders are our treasures.
They are, and I've heard it said when an elder dies, it's like a library is lost, and it's so true. He used to tell me stories about when he went to Vietnam as a civilian and how they'd eat the chicken with the, already a developed chicken in the egg, or they'd eat snake and so many weird things, and it was so cool to be able to draw upon his insight and wisdom, and he was such a good man to me, and I just want to say that. We have a big show coming up next. Paul Chavez, Mr. International, is coming up next. He will be on from 12 to 1. Old school with a new twist. When you listen to Paul Chavez music, you're going to feel good because Paul knows how to do it. He's been DJing for many, many years, and he's going to be putting out some good stuff for you. 11 to 12. I'm sorry, not 12. What did I say? 12 to 1. 11 to 12. When I finish here, Mr. Pablo will be up here next. Guys, as I always say, everybody's looking for a hero. And if you can't find one, be one. Be one that reaches out and shares the history of your culture, of your family, of your story. Get that pen, get that tablet, start writing. It starts with page 1. Page 1 is the beginning, and all you got to do is start there. Chris is a great example. He's a guy that really took this from nothing and made it into a really exciting read. Chris, well, thank you for being a hero.
Paul,
thank you for coming on to the show.
My pleasure.
Guys, you've been watching The Weekend Boost. I am your host, Paul Lane. I will see you next time. We have an exciting guest coming up next time. I'm going through a past life therapy session on next week, and I'll be telling you all about it. And the past life trainer will be my guest. So we will see you then, guys. Have a happy Halloween. See you next time.
Happy Halloween.
Good show.